All right, let me set the record straight. Game dev YouTube is not dying, it's not dead, and right now it does not suck. In fact, I think we're in a very strong renaissance period, and there's been 2 videos that come out recently that I really want to kind of delve into and have this whole discussion as to why people think game dev is dead. But there's a lot to discuss here in terms of the state of game development on YouTube. Now, these 2 videos have been made by Black Dev and Future Games. Their videos are linked in the description if you want to check them out. I'm basically written a whole bunch of notes from the videos, mostly from Future Games, and then Black Dev basically just made a really short response video to this. Before I start, I want to clarify in saying that this is not an attack. And I know when people say that, usually then they release the hounds and tear whoever they're responding to apart. I want to come with as much of a kind word, open arms, and saying, okay, you've brought up this discussion, there's a few points you've raised, and there's some things that need to be resolved because of it. I also think it's really important for Black Dev and Future Games to kind of understand in this YouTube space we have with game development that we as a community need to stick together. We don't need any infighting. And I think a lot of this stuff can be easily resolved with just clearer communication and more understanding, basically. Now, if you haven't watched these videos already, then I suggest you do. They're linked in the description. Once you've watched the Future Games video, I'm going to be responding to that first, and then I've got like 1 or 2 comments for Black Dev to respond to, because basically it covers the same points as Future Games. So watch those, come back, and then let's get into it. So firstly, the quality and activity of game dev YouTube videos has not gone down. This is making me think you aren't getting recommended new videos. And with a niche so specific like game development, there's obviously going to be smaller viewership because the target audience is much smaller compared to a more mainstream audience. And one thing that does frustrate me a little bit is that you reference a handful of these big YouTubers and then kind of have them as examples on pedestals saying, this is what game dev YouTube is, without referencing the majority of smaller creatives who are doing game dev YouTube more consistently. And again, saying the influx of Dani clones just sounds like hyperbole to me. I haven't seen that many. Obviously, his editing style has been adapted to a lot of creatives. Like, it's a good editing style. People like engaging content, and it's not just game dev that's doing that. It's like all of YouTube, all of mainstream YouTube. I mean, the biggest YouTubers are doing this as well. So I wouldn't even say they're copying Dani so much as they're copying just what is mainstream. And the most important thing to remember is just because a few creatives have stopped uploading does not mean that the whole niche is gone and that they're their foundational bricks that hold our community together. The small amount of growth on YouTube is explosive, and you have these creatives who work really hard, sometimes who burn out, or sometimes just consistently try to make the best thing they can, and it consumes their lives and they get really big and they get lucky. But just because a handful of devs stop uploading doesn't mean that the majority of smaller people who are still creating things aren't consistently uploading, aren't consistently creating things. Now, we also get references to Dani a lot. There's other channels I think who are more broadly game development related, aren't necessarily like indie devs making stuff that could compete with him that are still uploading. And that's one thing we should recognize, that we are in a niche of game development, going smaller into indie devs and then even smaller into like dev vlogs. We aren't talking about like video essay videos or head talking videos like this. And before Dani, and still now, there are so many other creators I can think of that are making dev vlogs that are fantastic. Like, he didn't start the trend, he just managed to ride the wave, especially after doing his 1 year of game development. He got an influx of new viewers, and with enough market research, understanding his audience, where he was able to work on it to the point where it was a very viable content machine. And so with the luck of a viral video, him leaning into his audience, and then establishing a new brand for himself that audience really enjoyed, and delivering on all of this is something that I think we can all learn from Dani. In his videos, he promised something and it was very simple to understand and see, and by the end of the video, he delivered on it. And then the discussion about Baji and Polymars, there are so many YouTubers who get into the game who want to pivot from something, who want to change, or who simply go, I've achieved a goal in my life. Much like Brackies, who did something incredible for so long and didn't necessarily give up, just said, I want to move on and try something new. That's good for them. They've been able to achieve something. And it also makes a pathway for someone else to fill that gap. Like how I Heart Game Dev, I think, has begun to fill the shoes of Brackies and being this really high quality YouTube tutorials, along with so many other people. Now we get to this analogy of the conveyor belt in videos, and this is something I could talk about for so much longer. And I think if you're interested in more game dev, YouTube and Linux, what to do with all that sort of stuff. I did one about game dev, devlogs. I want to do one in the future about live streams. If that interests you, then hit subscribe, because I feel like I need to start talking more about this. The analogy of videos being on a conveyor belt, and they come by and then the viewers watch them, and then over time they don't watch them anymore, and the curve of viewership on a video kind of goes up and then flatlines. Isn't with every video, and it isn't with evergreen content especially. For those who do videos on YouTube, okay, when you first upload a video, the first people to see your video are your subscribers. Based on how those subscribers engage with your video will then depend on the performance of your video. If people really enjoyed it, if they were really engaged with it, good click-through rate, good retention, all that sort of stuff, YouTube is more likely to recommend that to other people, either in the similar watching sphere as they are, which is why it's really important you try to get the right audience who obviously watch the same thing as other people. Or if you get those really good numbers and then you have good title, good thumbnail, the content, keywords are all there, then people who search that, for example, with tutorials, they're more likely to find it because YouTube knows this is a good video based on this information. And so some of these videos have really good shelf life, which we call evergreen content. Content's just always good, always clicked on. And if you are able to make something that's more relatable long-term, specific tutorials, how to get started with Unity, what's the best game engine, how to start making a game, stuff that people are always going to want to see, and new people are going to come and watch. Maybe people who need to get reinvigorated in a certain subject will come and watch. That's when that flat line will start bumping up, and instead of it being, a certain amount and then flatlining, you'll end up getting a nice curve and maybe even a few bumps along the way, depending on what happens. Whereas when you make more time-sensitive content like this video or other topics like, Unity controversy, which always appears up now and again, or updates on engines or specific things that are relevant to a time period, but after a few weeks or a few months, it's no longer important, that's when you'll see videos die out a lot more quickly. And that flat line will hit as soon as that information is no longer relevant. And all of this is considering that you have nailed a thumbnail, title, and have a good, well-edited video. And so going back to the whole consistency thing, I think it isn't so much now consistency in upload time, it's consistency in the video. The reason why I think this is because if you're consistent with the content of your videos, then once they get uploaded, then people will come and watch because they know you'll be consistent with that. Obviously, it helps to build a community if you're consistent. I'm not saying that you should no longer follow a schedule. That's still very important, especially when it gets to the business side of things and you have things like ad revenue and community engagement and retention rate and all that other stuff. Consistency is good, but it isn't necessary if you're making good content. And then there were some takes about just game dev content being boring, which I have to say I think is bullcrap. I think you're watching the wrong videos. YouTube's probably saying, hey, you like this certain creator, I'm going to show stuff that's relevant to that creator, and then you go, oh, it's boring. It's probably because it somehow relates to that creator. If you look for quality game dev content on YouTube, it is there consistently. It isn't always from the same person, but there's always somebody uploading good stuff. But I do agree, when making videos, having the impression that no one cares about your game is a good mindset to have when trying to make good content about your game. So in the summary of cheap Dani clones, creative burnout, and boring content, I haven't seen many cheap Dani clones, if at all. And if you are seeing them, then you should, there's a little button in YouTube where you say, don't recommend these to me, and then it will stop doing that. Creative burnout happens to selective people, but also happens just all the time on YouTube. And the boring content thing is completely opinionated and super hyperbole. There's some amazing videos out there. Like the no communication videos, I think are just the most interesting videos to watch. There are so many developers making such good content. To collectively call everything boring, I think is a crime because so many people are working so hard to make great videos for people to watch. And the final point that Future Games gave was that I just disagree with completely. I wrote down that we are not at the low point. Dani being gone has not meant the end of game dev. If anything, it's given other game devs breathing room to experiment and be their own thing rather than try and chase the numbers. Because I will admit, numbers are very appealing to people, especially when those numbers convert into money, which then converts into other things people can do with their life. It gives you more freedom. And I've seen people be more laid back and less concerned about trying to compete with someone who is obviously at the top of their game, to be more experimental and just relax, not be freaked out about the numbers because Dani's released a new video and oh my gosh, we need to copy him because that's what we do with YouTube. We just copy each other because that's all this place is. And with Black Dev's video, I have to laugh because he's talking about, you know, game dev YouTubers are slowly fading out of existence. When he's showing punch for punch, like a devlog series, I think, which is the best season on YouTube. If you haven't watched it, it's the first devlog series I've watched from beginning to an actual end. Like, he's finished the game, he's published it. There's the ending video. There's a finale. It was amazing to experience that. How can people say that devlogs are dying when there's literally a dev who's done through a whole devlog series, finished his game, been successful and said, all right, now moving on to the next game. That's amazing. That means growth. And then Black Dev, you say that there are maybe 3 developers who innovated this year, but you don't ever say who. I understand this video was made in 3 hours. You make very clear in that video, but please tell us who that was. Because we're kind of basing it on your word, and I don't know who those people are. Am I sub to them? I don't know. Am I missing out? I kind of feel like I'm missing out. I don't know the information here. Got to give me more context here. Okay, and this needs to be said, and then I think in a video format, just to make this a bit more of a proper back and forth discussion. Black Dev, you say you disagree with what was mostly said in the video, but your video is shorter. It reiterates exactly what was said with maybe 1 or 2 different points with less information. But then you diss on the low quality editing, scripting, and voiceover. Just because you have a better mic and better editing style does not mean that your video is in any way superior to Future Games' video. We need to be kind here, we need to be respectful of each other. And I've got to call it out, man. What you did was just throwing shade at another creative, and that's not cool. We shouldn't do that. Now, to finish off, I just want you all to know that game development on YouTube is going strong, and that's both in terms of entertainment, documentaries we've seen. Psychodyssey is an amazing series, but I will find the guys who made Psychonauts 2, it does like a whole 7 to 8 year journey of them making that game. It is properly documented by Player 2 Productions, who are an amazing group of people who make amazing content. And with every game dev I talk to, they are just as passionate about making videos on YouTube as they are making games. And I want people out there who may be looking at the game dev space right now on YouTube and going, it's not looking too good here, guys. We're getting just controversial videos, or we're getting just, clone videos. There is good stuff out there. Look for it and you'll find it. And as these videos continue to be made by these people, they will eventually rise to the higher ranks. You'll be able to find them more easily. And we can all rest assured that this is not the end of the genre. And please, don't take my word from it. Listen to some other devs and their opinion.
Hello, my name's Dan, and I run a game dev channel here on YouTube, which apparently is a pointless dead exercise. Thanks to Nathan for inviting me to share some thoughts on this topic. Just as a bit of a background as to kind of me, I'm a product marketing manager at an indie game studio / publisher. We work on a game called Empires: The Undergrowth, and we also publish some of the games such as Adapt, Ecosystem, and Horticular. So basically, online marketing is kind of what I do daily. I have to say, I found the Future Games video slightly cynical. Well, yeah, the kind of game dev space seems to have gotten a bit stale. With so many videos now copying the Dani-esque, blue guy in the thumbnail with a white outline, big eyes, and big yellow text that says, like, look at this amazing video. Or, titles with, like, I am working on my dream, open world, MMO, RPG, VR, amazing game. Unfortunately, that's just a way of life on YouTube. If you want to kind of be making those types of videos, that is what gets the clicks. Not in all cases, because it is quite saturated, but, that's the sort of stuff that people want to see. The Future Games video kind of alluded to Blackthorn Prod and the kind of 6 game devs make a game without communicating type videos. Then, yeah, there's a lot of them, but they work and they're quite entertaining, and each project is slightly different. So even though the you know, the video idea itself is the same. The kind of things that are coming out of each video, you know, having all those devs and having them collaborate makes something crazy and weird and fun, and people want to see that, and that's why it's working. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it type. But that doesn't mean that this clickbaity stuff which you have to do doesn't suck, and it does suck, and it will continue to suck. But that's just kind of the age we live in, unfortunately. But it's worth pointing out that for every one of those channels that's doing that, there is some great stuff finding its niche and finding its way on YouTube, and kind of having the algorithm promote it and reward that kind of creativity. For example, just recently, there was a new series of a game called Crimson Hollow. It's on devlog. They had devlog 0 just introducing the project. That's at 250,000 views. The next follow-up video's only been out for a day and has 25,000 views. You've also got games such as Frog Island, another channel about an indie game specifically that just kind of came out of nowhere and has done really well, and the algorithm has promoted that. And I've spoken about this before when I was on the Zero to Play podcast, which I'll send Nathan a link, then he can put the link below if you want to watch it. But basically there's two types of different kind of YouTube people here. Like on one hand, you've got an indie dev who's making YouTube videos, and on the other you've got a YouTuber who's making indie games. And to find your place as a creator in this space is you need to decide what's more important to you. Do you want to be a YouTuber, or do you want to be an indie game developer? They're two separate things, they're two separate full-time things. You can't be a full-time YouTuber, which you have to be to make it like really go well, and also be a full-time indie game developer. That's why you see, like, you know, channels such as Ponty Pants. He released Punch a Bunch, but he was uploading videos like every kind of couple of months, not every week. If you want to go mega viral and make a living from YouTube and be a YouTuber, unfortunately you have to do that clickbaity kind of Dani-esque stuff and just hope something sticks and takes off, or better yet, make your own trend, which is admittedly a lot more difficult to do. But if your goal is to be an indie game developer, you shouldn't be focusing on, you know, having this big YouTube brand and going like mega viral with each video. I think it's more important to use it to build a community, to kind of get them to wishlist your game on Steam and kind of make an audience that will go buy your game like once it's out. That's way more beneficial and important than the kind of very small drip feeding amounts you get from YouTube ad revenue. And making a game, especially solo, that's more than a full-time job. If you're going to do it properly and get it out in a reasonable amount of time, you need to be spending every waking moment as a solo working on this game, or massively reduce the scope. But if your goal is to make a living from being an indie dev who just uses YouTube as a marketing tool, which it can be, I think you're going to be better off in the long run doing that. But you just need to make that decision and kind of, you know, get out of this mindset of game dev YouTube and that it's dying. It is what it is. It serves two, even though that's quite a broad spectrum of game dev YouTube, it serves two different purposes. There are some people that kind of toe the line and make it really work for them, but it's just, that's not the case for everyone. Like, not everyone is going to be these kind of like massive channels, and that's just the unfortunate reality. Yeah, sounds a bit of a dour note to end on, but you know, game dev isn't dying. There's smaller content creators out there. There are ones just starting up who get lucky, get the algorithm, push them up. And there are the ones who, you know, grafting away. I've been at this for quite a while, and my channel's only at about 12,000 subscribers. But the more effort I've put in, I've seen my kind of numbers going up. And it is a numbers game after all.
So again, we have nothing to worry about. Everything is going to be fine. And if you have anything to go by in other genres, then we are in safe hands. If people will come and make the stuff. If you all come and watch, it's as simple as that. But that's it. I hope you all have taken this in good faith. I hope I haven't offended anyone. Please guys, I'm just trying to have a conversation here. I don't want people to get concerned that game dev is dying on YouTube, because it's something I am so passionate about. And I hope Future Games and Black Dev, you guys can just continue making awesome content, because I will admit, I see potential in your videos. You were able to get my attention. Okay, it was on Twitter. You used Twitter well. And so I'm keen to see what happens in the future with your guys' channels and your work. Anyways, as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.